Hello, welcome to Wellness and Wisdom with Dr. Jaha Dukureh, the podcast dedicated to empowering women over 40 to age gracefully, competently, and beautifully. I'm Dr. Jaha Dukureh, a family doctor, preventive medicine specialist, author, teacher, mother, and expert in hormone replacement, anti-aging, and longevity. With decades of experience as a physician and as a woman embracing every stage of life, I'm here to share practical advice, expert insights, and inspiring stories to help you thrive in happiness, health, and appearance. Together with my guests, we'll explore topics that matter most to you, from navigating perimenopause and optimizing your health to redefining success in retirement and beyond. Let's celebrate the aging process with vitality and purpose, because your best years are still ahead. Subscribe now to add more life to your years and step into the best version of yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, prepare to be inspired by a story of resilience, courage, and transformative impact. Today, I am honored to welcome Jaha Dukureh, a formidable women's rights activist whose journey from personal adversity to global advocacy is nothing short of remarkable. Born in the Gambia, Jaha was subjected to female genital mutilation at just 1 week old and entered into an arranged marriage at 15. Rather than being defined by those early life challenges, she channeled her experiences with a powerful movement for change. In 2013, at the age of 23, Jaha founded Safe Hands for Girls, a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting survivors of FGM and campaigning against its practice. Jaha's influence extends beyond her organization. In 2018, she was appointed as the first Women's Regional Goodwill Ambassador of the United Nations for Africa, focusing on mobilizing youth and communities to end FGM and child marriage across the continent. The practice of FGM has significant public health implications, including severe bleeding, infections, complications in childbirth, and increased risk of newborn deaths. These health risks contribute to broader public health challenges that affect societies worldwide. With increasing global migration, individuals practicing in various communities may relocate to other regions where FGM is not traditionally practiced, making this a very relevant issue for diverse societies, including the United States. Understanding and addressing FGM is essential for effective cultural integration and the protection of all community members. In addition, human trafficking of young girls is rampant throughout the world. In the United States, while the legal age of marriage is 18, without special exceptions, child marriages still occur. Jaha's advocacy has earned her global recognition, including being named one of Time Magazine's 100 Most Influential People in 2016, and a nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize. She continues to inspire change, break barriers, and empower women across continents. Join us as we delve into the life and work of Jaha Dukureh, exploring her journey, the challenges she's faced, and the victories she's achieved in her fight against FGM and for women's rights worldwide. This is a conversation you won't want to miss. Hello, Jaha, and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. It's a Saturday, but I'm doing good.
Okay. So with all the attention your work has garnered, do you ever feel like you're discussing someone else's life?
No, because the reason why I decided to talk about FGM is to put a human face and a human voice to it. So it's never about someone else. It's as hard as it gets, but it's not about, I know that it's about me, it's about my community, it's about my people.
So today we're going to talk about your important work, your book, and you. For our listeners who might not be familiar, could you briefly explain what female genital mutilation, otherwise known as FGM, entails?
Yes, so the World Health Organization defines female genital mutilation as the partial or total removal of the female genitalia, which is the external genitalia, basically. There are mainly three types of FGM. In some communities, type 1 is where entirely cut the clitoris. And then you have type 2, where the clitoris is removed, as well as the labia. And then you have type 3, where not only is the external genitalia removed, but the woman is sealed to prevent her from having sex until marriage. So these are the three main types of FGM. There's also type 4 that includes any injury or harm that's made to the external genitalia for non-medical reasons, right? So this is what the practice of female genital mutilation is. Around the world, it's practiced in Africa, it's practiced in the Middle East, it's practiced in Latin America, as far as places like the Maldives. And different communities have different beliefs, but yeah, that's what female genital mutilation is.
So, while child marriage is a widespread global issue, how does its prevalence compare to that of FGM?
Well, child marriage is more because globally there are 230 million women that have been subjected to female genital mutilation, where we have more than 800 million girls that have been forced to marry before the age of 18. So it's not a numbers game per se, because both practices are extremely harmful.
So, a recent report estimated that in 2019, about 385,000 women and girls living in the United States were survivors of FGM, and that there were an additional 31,000 at risk. What are your thoughts on the presence of this practice in the United States and other Western countries?
Like I said, female genital mutilation is not something that's exclusive to places like Africa. Back in the 90s, the Playboy magazine, when you looked at the front page of the Playboy magazine, they were promoting female circumcision. And then to this day, there's plastic surgeons that are doing what we call labiaplasty. That's not any different from what some people consider female genital mutilation. So, the prevalence of FGM in the United States, I wouldn't just say it's because of immigration, but it's because of the control of women's bodies and looking at women. I think pornography has also increased, the desire for women to change how they look. And so female genital mutilation being present in the US as well as other Western countries, when people immigrate, they don't necessarily leave behind their identities and their cultures. And a lot of times, just like the US, just like the work that we're doing in Africa, it takes a lot of education and community outreach and unlearning for people to decide to leave some of these harmful traditional practices.
Right. So, is FGM illegal in the United States?
Yes,
And
it is.
how effective are the legal frameworks in preventing the practice?
I mean, FGM is illegal in the United States, and throughout the years, there's been a lot of advocacy, and a lot of states have also passed laws to close some of the loopholes and ensure that, like, girls are not able to be sent back to their parents' home countries and undergo FGM. Even vacation cutting is illegal in the US. So I think the US government has done a lot when it comes to ensuring that women and girls are protected from going through this practice.
Now, considering the recent United States policy changes, such as cutting funding to United Nations agencies focused on reproductive health, how do you foresee these actions affecting the global fight against FGM?
Already we are seeing it. There's a lot of FGM programs that were funded by USAID that are being impacted by the funding cuts that are happening. And I think, to me, whether we're looking at women's economic empowerment or their reproductive rights or sexual violence, and a lot of these programs were in communities to really help protect and prevent violence. And by us cutting some of these funding that we're providing shelter, that we're providing some kind of aid, whether that was food, that was medication, it's actually very, very disheartening to see. I've personally never been funded by USAID, but I know projects that have been funded by USAID.
Now, it's only recently that topics like this has entered mainstream conversations. I remember the days when the word vagina would not be said on public TV or written in a newspaper. It was considered not something one would talk about. And so I think I see where discussing FGM is undoubtedly challenging still. What drives you to continue speaking out and breaking this culture of silence around women's issues?
I mean, I think for me, as someone that is from Africa and someone that comes from a practicing community, when we look at both FGM and child marriage, it was important that the people that were leading the conversation, whether it was in the media, whether it was in our communities, whether it was dealing with our elders, they were people that looked like me, sounded like me, and have the lived experience to ensure that you cannot deny their pain. Because when a woman comes to you and tells you that I'm a survivor of this practice, and the reason why I'm doing this work is because I don't want what happened to me to continue happening to other girls. That's something you cannot deny. Versus someone that's from the West coming into a community and saying that, well, I think your culture is bad. I think you guys are barbaric. I think you guys are this, you're that, and you should stop. So there's a huge disconnect with that messaging versus when survivors stand up and appeal to their communities, their religious leaders to ensure that change comes. And I think that's the kind of change that's lasting and more sustainable.
So how did you find the courage to address such a sensitive subject publicly, especially within your community?
Like I said earlier, I come from the Gambia. I come from a tribe that practices FGM and child marriage 100% of the time. So to me, when I gave birth to my daughter, it was important that I stand up. It wasn't only about protecting Khadija, but it was about protecting the millions like her who continue to face both of these practices. And I knew if I did not speak up, Khadija's life would probably be very, very similar.
So could you share the circumstances that led to you becoming a child bride?
I come from a tribe that practices child marriage.
So how old were you when you were married off?
I was married off when I was 15 years old.
And did the FGM affect your childbirth?
Yes, I mean, absolutely. It did affect my childbirth. And this is something that I talk about in my book that I wrote. I have 3 beautiful children, and it affected all my deliveries. And I wrote about that extensively in my book.
Yeah, so as a physician, I'm curious about your interactions with the medical community in the United States during your journey. Did you find that healthcare professionals could be knowledgeable and empathetic, or were they often misinformed about FGM or uninformed, let's say?
In my case, for instance, I remember my doctor in Atlanta was one of the most amazing doctors. And if I was still living in Atlanta, I think I would still be under his care. And he understood without any judgment. But in doing this work, I interact a lot with survivors all across the US. And I remember there was a case of a young Somali woman who went through type 3 FGM, and she was pregnant and went for her OBGYN visit. And when the doctor came in to see her, he screamed and walked outside and called other doctors to come look at what he saw. And I think instances like that dehumanize the patient and re-traumatize them, because you as a physician, that should not be the type of reaction regardless of what the incident. So because of that, I think as an organization, because I founded an organization called Safe Hands for Girls, we started working with doctors all over the Atlanta region, especially doctors that we knew were going to see survivors of FGM, to train them on cultural sensitivity and train them on what FGM is, so they know how to respond and care for people who have been subjected to this.
So, in order to consummate your marriage, you had to go to a doctor to undo some of the FGM. Is that right?
Yes.
So, did you have to find a particular doctor, or do you feel like you had to find someone who was familiar with the process?
I
Or
was a child. I was 15 years old at the time. I don't remember because I wasn't the one who found that doctor, but that was found by my family.
yeah, someone else took you there. How did you manage to become so comfortable discussing such an uncomfortable subject? It's really nothing short of courageous. I know you don't like to hear that, but it's amazing how much work you have done and your transparency. How does your husband feel about you being so vocal about the cultures that you come from?
I'm not married. It's never comfortable having these conversations.
Mhm.
We have these conversations because we need to bring light to the issue so that people who do not know what FGM is could at least care enough to do something about it, whether that's policymakers, whether that's people with influence that could bring that shift that is needed so badly globally. So every time I talk about this issue, it's not because I'm comfortable talking about it. I talk about this issue on behalf of the 230 million women worldwide who are living with this in silence and without being able to use their voice the same way I'm using my voice, but it's not out of comfort.
Right. No, I understand that. That's why I say I think it's courageous of you. What strategies have been effective in engaging diverse communities to abandon FGM practices? I think you've alluded to some of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's doing this work from a place of empathy and doing this work from a place of compassion. Because a lot of times, I think a lot of people do not understand why communities practice FGM. So that's why when we go into a community before we do anything, my team and I, we spend time listening, understanding. And that way we are able to intentionally design programs that cater to the needs of those communities. And we do understand that not all communities are the same. Like, for instance, a community in the Gambia might practice FGM from total different reasons to another community in Sierra Leone. You might find a community in Senegal or a community in Mali. The ability to understand why people believe in some of the things that they believe, and also coming to them from a place of respect and knowing that you've heard them, but educating them.
Yeah, and education is key.
Yes, definitely. Education is key.
Yeah, when it comes to public health, it really doesn't matter what the subject is. Education is key,
Absolutely.
particularly regarding women's health, because as I said, there's been a culture of silence regarding women's issues and women's health. And also, I think you mentioned in your book that education of girls is so important, just general education, not just sex education. It's not, just a general awareness and understanding of women if they could be uplifted.
Absolutely.
Do you feel that the incidence of FGM has decreased significantly in the past decade since you started your campaign?
I mean, I don't think it has decreased significantly, but I think there has been progress. In the case of the Gambia, when I first started going back to the Gambia, I think FGM was at 78%. And I think today it's around, with a new study that just came out, it's either 71 or 7. Yeah, I think it's actually at 71%. And that's huge progress because for decades, the figures don't even go down 1%.
Right.
And for us, so seeing shows that we can end FGM if we dedicate more resources to it, if we dedicate more in investing in communities directly to educate girls, to educate mothers, and help empower women in general. Because personally, even looking beyond FGM and child marriage, and when I travel across the continent and I meet young women who are in circumstances that are not favorable, whether they're being abused or they're going through other things, and you ask them, why can't you leave? And then the first thing they tell you is, where would I go? Who would take care of me? So I believe until we uplift women out of poverty and give them a chance at education, we will not end violence against women and girls.
Now, why do you think some religious leaders seem apprehensive about giving girls an education, particularly in Africa? I mean, we know that in Afghanistan, they don't want girls to go to school. So
I think it's fear. They're afraid of what happens when we are educated. They're afraid of what happens when we have our own money, because they know that once we're educated and we have our own money, we will not stay. We will not accept the violence. We will not accept the humiliation. We will not accept a lot of the things that they're putting us through. That's it. They're afraid of us having education, having our own money, and that's why.
So your book is called I Will Scream to the World, and you outline your vision for the future. What is the significance of the title of your book?
The significance is when a lot of people see me publicly, or, they read about me, they imagine that just because I'm an activist, I'm usually a screamer. But when you look into my work and you look into who I am as a person, you realize that the reason why I'm so effective at what I do is because I do not scream. It's because when I'm in these communities, I listen, and I win people over through love. I win people over through compassion, and I win people over through respect. So, I will scream to the world was a statement that I made when I was in Liberia, where I said, for every day, for the rest of my life, I will continue to scream to the world to say that FGM is wrong and child marriage is no different from rape. So the title of my book came from that statement that I made. But generally, if you read the book, you will realize that I'm not a screamer. But even beyond that, the book is not only about my activism, it's about, my journey from my childhood, where I talk about my family, my community, my mother, how I was raised, the things that I enjoyed in my childhood, to, my own experience of going through female genital mutilation, becoming a child bride not once but twice in my life, and then, escaping both of those situations and growing up, falling in love for the first time, and then going through my first heartbreak as well as talking about my children and how I approach motherhood. It's a whole person's journey, because I think as a global community, we have a tendency of looking at people like me. She's courageous, she's been through FGM, she's nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. So we just want to focus on that. But I'm a human being. And I think when I was writing this book, I emphasized that throughout the book, where I want people to see me as a person and not just the work that I've done on FGM, but everything else that I am about.
So what are your goals for Safe Hands for Girls, and how do you envision the organization's impact over the next decade?
So Safe Hands for Girls has been in operations for 10 years, wherein when we first started Safe Hands, we did a lot of our work focused on advocacy, ending FGM, ending child marriage, and doing projects around that. But for the next 10 years of our work, that's not going to be our focus. Our focus is more now on regenerative agriculture, uplifting women out of poverty, creating an educational center for both girls and women, married and unmarried, and ensuring that they're equipped with the tools, the resources, as well as the education for them to thrive. Yes, ending violence against women and girls would always be core to our mission, FGM and child marriage, but our goal is ensuring that we're investing in these women so that when you come into these communities, our work is something that you can touch, is something that you can feel, is something that you can see.
So how can our listeners get involved or support your initiatives, including ending FGM and child marriage?
Absolutely. We have a website. It's safeforgirls.com, or you can find us on any of the social media sites as Safe Hands for Girls. I'm also on, but you can donate. We're a 501c3 organization here in the US, which means that all donations that we receive are tax exempt. And then you can amplify our messages by following us on social media. So that way you stay updated on what we are doing, as well as how you can get involved. Sometimes we need volunteers. Sometimes it's your contribution that would make a difference. Sometimes it's helping us host events in your city or your town where we come and talk to people, especially now that I'm doing book tours and traveling across the United States.
Great. I often think that older women often hold influential positions within their families and their communities. And so this isn't just about the reproductive health aged women, yeah? The older women's perspectives and actions can significantly impact social norms and practices. And so by becoming informed and advocating against FGM, older women can play a pivotal role in challenging and changing harmful traditions, thereby protecting future generations. And so I make this point because, as you know, this podcast is actually for women who are over 40. And some people may be saying, well, what does this have to do with us? You know, I wanted to make that point there.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you made that. Thank you.
So let me ask you, do you have any political aspirations?
Not at the moment.
Okay. So beyond your advocacy work, you said that obviously you are a person and we appreciate you as a person. What personal passions or interests bring you joy and help you stay grounded?
I love agriculture, and I think I find the most amount of peace when I'm in the farm and when my hands are dirty with the soil. That's, when I connect, and I love the beach. I love water, and I find so much peace. Our farm in the Gambia is right on the river Gambia, so I get both, wherein I get the farm and I get the amazing river. That's pretty much where I find joy. And I have a horse as well. So yeah.
You have a horse?
Yes.
Wow, that's great. Did you start horse riding recently or you started in the Gambia?
I started it in the Gambia, but I fell in love with horses as an adult, because when I was in the Gambia, the only time I would ride on a horse is if I was riding with my brothers to go to the farm or, but I think as an adult, I fell in love with horses.
Well, you need to keep on with the agriculture because they eat a lot of hay, and that's a lot of work having a horse.
Yeah.
So Jaha, it's been wonderful having you on my show, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
And I appreciate all the work that you do.
Thank you very much.
And please, if we can be of any other help in the future, please let me know. And I'd love to have you come back at a later date and let's see how things are going. We have another decade, like you said, of plans. Even 71%, even though it sounds like a major improvement, that's still 71 out of 100 women. That's still a lot of work to be done. Thank you so much. It was really nice talking with you.
Thank you very much and have a good day.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Wow. Today's chat with Jaha Dukureh was truly eye-opening. We delved into serious health impacts of FGM and child marriage and how it's not just a distant issue. It affects communities worldwide, including right here at home. FGM is a form of gender-based violence that perpetuates inequality and discrimination. Standing against such practices reflects a commitment to ethical principles and moral responsibility, promoting a more just and equitable society for all. A massive thank you to Jaha for sharing her powerful story and insights. And to you, our listeners, we appreciate you tuning in. If Jaha's journey has moved you, consider supporting organizations working to end FGM and child marriage. Stay connected with us for more conversations that matter. Catch you next time. Bye-bye for now.